What is it that makes human communities work? And we'll see that the answer really involves trust. And there are many new fields that are converging toward looking at trust. For example, the economic downturn that we're all living through has helped spur new fields that are called behavioral economics or neuroeconomics. Even Adam Smith, by the way, didn't think the markets regulate themselves. His prior book, Before the Wealth of Nations, was about morality and people caring about one another. That was the basis. Markets don't regulate themselves, in Adam Smith's point of view, unless there's altruism, unless people are really acting morally in the greater good, in the general interests of a society. And understanding the brain actually may help us understand the ways in which people are irrational, the ways in which they're predictably irrational. So it turns out that there's a new field called behavioral game theory that shows that people don't really actually make decisions based on what's good for them. And you would think they would. What a piece of work is man, how noble in reason, right? Hamlet says. And actually, people make decisions irrationally. And another area of research that I'm going to talk about is called social capital research. Social networking, which has really been very prominent as the internet has become so much about social media. And we've all seen in the newspapers the effects of cyberbullying, of people doing things on the internet that's not altruistic, that really is very, very destructive. So how can you have a trusting network? Now, this area of social capital research I want to tell you about. Sociologists will ask this question in a survey. Do you think people can be trusted? Do you trust people? And they have generally a 4-point or a 5-point scale that they ask people. And it turns out when you do that, there are low and high trust regions in the United States of America. Nevada is a very low trust region. Nobody seems to be very surprised by that. Minnesota is a very high trust region. The Deep South is a very low trust region. And not only that, but this generalizes internationally. In Brazil, 2% of people say they trust other people. In Norway, 65% of people say they trust other people. Well, what are the characteristics of low trust regions? Fewer people vote, lower social participation, parents in schools less active. There are greater differences between the very rich and the very poor in low trust regions. And by the way, the more the discrepancy between the very rich and the very poor in a country, the more it predicts economic decline. So countries like India have enormous discrepancy between the very rich and the very poor. $71 billion a year in India is allocated to feed the poor. It's estimated that 1 billion of that gets to the poor. The rest is corruption. Corruption is rampant in places where there are high discrepancy between the rich and the poor. So I just learned last night at dinner that the head of Goldman Sachs got a bonus this year of $438 million. That's a cool bonus. That's what's happening in the United States. Over the last 50 years, CEOs, on average, have gone from making 20 times what the average worker makes to making 350 times what the average worker makes. There's less philanthropy in low-trust regions, greater crime of all kinds, lower longevity, poorer health, poor physical health, lower achievement in schools of children. And any intervention you do, if you want to test an intervention in the schools, do it first in Minnesota, because you have a much greater chance of it being effective. If you do it in Mississippi, it's not going to work as well, because interventions don't work as well in low-trust areas. So if you're poor in Mississippi and you want to get welfare, you have to earn less than $13,000 a year for a family of 4. In Minnesota, that figure is $40,000 for a family of 4. And this has now been generalized across countries. Now, there are vast implications of low social capital or low trust for states, for neighborhoods, for countries. Isn't it amazing that it's in the best interests for us economically to care about the people who are disenfranchised in this country? That's amazing to me, that altruism actually is functional and makes sense.